Frozen Orb is better than anyone thinks it is, but not that much better. And not because it's a bad skill or anything, but mostly because its mechanics are a little wonky. Yeah, we're gonna get into it. So the footage on display is going to be a level 100 Nightmare Dungeon, a Lord Zero kill, and an Uber Duriel kill. And now that that tag is under the mini-map, you're able to see it, but all footage on this channel has always been on hardcore characters because I love pain. So just know any content you see from me will and always has been on hardcore, and any build featured is completely hardcore viable. Okay, so first we'll talk about like the annoying parts of the skill. You can't aim it. It has a set distance it travels, but the enchantment aims at a random target whenever it procs, regardless of distance. Like it can hit things off screen and target things right next to you. I think that's by design so that console players aren't at a blatant disadvantage as opposed to PC players with certain skills, because I mean that would be pretty dumb if Frozen Orb was like a PC only skill technically. You know, I understand, but it's still kind of dumb. To touch on the enchantment some more, it has a flat chance to activate whenever you cast a non-basic skill, and that's how Firewall used to be, where Firewall had a flat chance of activating per tick of burning damage as opposed to how it is now, which is based off of lucky hit. And they changed that because everyone thought it felt bad. So why is it that the Frozen Orb enchantment has a flat chance to proc as opposed to, you know, like a lucky hit chance to proc? And I think that kind of flat chance feels bad because you have no control over it outside of the enchantment master legendary node, so you don't really have any way to scale it besides that one instance. I hope Blizzard sees this. Change the Frozen Orb enchantment to when a certain amount of chill is applied, send out another Frozen Orb so that you could scale it off of chill application and like crowd control duration, and that way those would be alternative multipliers to your total overall DPS. That would be a sick enchantment. Anyways, the animation is dog shit. Like seriously, the way it interacts with other animations feels completely wrong, and it seems like there's an intentional delay to it somehow. Like your character goes like this, and when he goes like this, it starts to form, and then when he goes like that, then it shoots out in front of your character. And it's like dumb because it's not doing anything for the first half of its animation, and then it does something afterwards. And that's kind of dangerous and also annoying because it feels like anytime you activate the skill, there's a slight delay to it, and that does not feel good. We're going to be talking about how Blizzard comes into the picture with this build later, because we're going to be using the Wizard's Blizzard perk, which makes our core skills cost less mana, but that animation is amazing. Blizzard's animation feels really good. It's instant. The effect goes off instantly. It's just crazy how Frozen Orb is like, it feels terrible. I hate the animation. It's dog shit. Okay. The way it plays is the same as you would play it in Diablo 2. And I love Diablo 2 Frozen Orb. It's probably my most activated ARPG skill across all games. So you're gonna have to keep track of the distance between you and your target though, because you can't aim it. You get used to this pretty quickly, but it's not that big of a deal, but it still feels bad functionally, especially on high movement enemies like Kixarth, the Helltide Assassin, and things like that. It's wonky. But what you wanna do is target directly behind an enemy. And actually the AoE of Frozen Orb in Diablo 4 is pretty large, so you can aim a little bit further behind because you want the orb to go through them and then explode on the other side of them so that it gets that sort of shotgunning effect that we're looking for. All right, the mana problems on this build are unreal. Before you can play purely Frozen Orb and not supplement single target damage with ice shards, you'll need the Chain Lightning enchant coupled with the recharging aspect, invigorating conduit, frigid breeze, avalanche alongside its aspect, and resource generation on both rings, on top of casting Blizzard for the Wizard's Blizzard perk to be active. And then still, when you're playing like shit and can't aim, you're not going to be proccing much mana gain or mana foregoing with the avalanche key passive, since you actually have to hit your targets, which means that this build actually has a pretty high skill cap. But once you get used to it, it's not a big deal. It's mostly like just figuring out the distance between you and enemies and your positioning, and that kind of comes naturally as you're trying to min-max your DPS, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think you'll get along just fine. Okay, the stagger is great, but not amazing. So those burst windows on staggered bosses feel really nice with the multipliers to CC'd enemies, like damage to frozen enemies and so on. But those burst windows also don't come around too often, since we have to solve our mana issues with Chain Lightning enchant rather than being able to use Frostbolt enchant. And if we were able to use Frostbolt enchant, we would essentially triple the amount of CC that we apply to enemies, so that those burst windows would come around more often. Alas, we have to use Chain Lightning enchant for now. Feels bad. However, again, I'm a role player, so I'm not going to do this, but the more balanced version of the Frozen Orb build would be to still supplement your single target damage with ice shards. Now, everyone's played ice shards. If you played Sork before, I know you don't really want to do more of it, but it's just too good. And if you look at the lucky hit chance to mana cost ratio, it's like 5 times more effective than Frozen Orb is. And that's by design, because Frozen Orb is an AoE skill, while ice shards is more so a single target skill. And so you're going to be proccing your avalanche a lot. You're going to be proccing your mana gain with frost skills on hitting vulnerable enemies a lot. Your primary resource gain affixes a lot. And you're able to sustain your single target DPS and mana cost without Chain Lightning enchant. However, I wanted to do a pure Frozen Orb build because that's just me, baby. I'm a purist. I don't know what to say. So that brings me into the next point, which is like, this is a pure Frozen Orb build. It's not some fancy like use unstable currents to proc as many Frozen Orbs as possible and scale all damage and anything like that. But this is how I've always played Frozen Orb since 2001, baby. I'm not changing. And a little tip to Blizzard as well, there aren't enough dark blues in the animation for that contrast that we all remember from Diablo 2. Also, it's more like a frozen spike ball, not a frozen orb. I don't really know though. I'm not an artist or a designer or anything like that, but I just feel like it's not visually pleasing enough. Like the orb itself isn't visually pleasing enough. On ultra settings, it's one of the most pleasing skills in the game. It's beautiful. Oh my goodness. But there's not enough dark, deep blues. Anyway, Frozen Orb is definitely on the verge of being S tier. If they bring down the best builds to where they would be considered balanced, Frozen Orb will stand amongst that top group because it really is that good. Like, or if they just make it possible to spoof your mana without having to use an enchantment slot up, that would also break open its possibilities. But still, even with all of its flaws, I love this build. I love Frozen Orb. I'm a Frozen Orb Andy. I want everyone here to go out and play it because you'll understand when you start playing it. It's something else. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, and concerns down below. I do read every comment, so just know you'll be seen, of course. And thank you, and stay safe out there.